Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Black and Healthy podcast. I'm your host and the owner of Black and Healthy. Thank you for returning back, and I am so excited to share another guest with you today. But before we get into that, the Black and Healthy podcast is where we support majority Black owned businesses in the upstate of South Carolina. This message is to go across the world, of course, but we want to start from the beginning with dialogue with professionals regarding health and wellness. So if you would like to sponsor the Black and Healthy podcast, please email me at blackandhealthy@gmail.com. So that's BLKN as in Nancy, healthy@gmail.com. Make sure that you subscribe to our podcast. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube, as well as check out our website at www.blackandhealthy.com. Subscribe to the email list for updates. And also, of course, connect and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. But without further ado, I'm excited to have our special guest, Ciera Young.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell the people who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Ciera Young. I am a licensed professional counselor associate, but just call me the mental health homegirl because all of that professional stuff is not with my vibe. I grew up in a little bit around everywhere around the upstate, but if you ask me, then I'm from Duncan. So born and raised, and all things mental health, helping people heal beyond the white couch, on the white couch, everything in between.
Yes. So the reason why I have Ciera here with us today is December is right around the corner, of course, and winter is right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have experienced this before, or if you may not realize that you've experienced this before, but it's called winter blues, or maybe December blues, whichever. And pretty much like you notice that your mood changes a little bit. There's a change in the times, of course, with daylight savings. And so the sun may not be as close to the earth. It's actually further away from the earth scientifically, and that can alter your mood. So what I want to get to into first with you is, how did you even get started in what you are doing today?
Yeah, so my story kind of goes back to being in just younger and experiencing emotional things. And of course, in the Black community, mental health was kind of really taboo and still very much is. And so I experienced a lot of emotional things growing up, was suicidal, dependent on alcohol, a lot of things. And really nobody gave me guidance on what I should do in order to kind of help myself be healthier. And after I had my daughters, I attempted suicide when both of them were a lot, just babies. And I realized, I got to do something in order for me to create a healthy environment for them and be able to have a life where I can see them grow up. I got to do something. And it started my journey in therapy. And that was really like an eye-opening moment for me to be able to see the transformation that happens when you go to therapy. And so I didn't know that was going to be my journey. It was just kind of my experience, and then becoming more transparent about my story. Other people started to come to me, and I was like, okay, I need to be able to offer them more than just like them being able to sit down and just tell me their story. How can I help them navigate through? Yeah. So I went back to school at the beginning of the pandemic, and the rest was history.
So your clientele, who do you see? Like, what's your target audience?
Yeah. So I feel that my target audience is beginning to shift, primarily because I typically see millennial women. That's not specific to Black women, white women. It's a variety of dynamic, but usually a lot of times people who are in a space where their moms dealing or coming out of college, kind of in that space where they're trying to find themselves and looking for ways to navigate all of their roles, but trying to be themselves too. And it's crazy because I feel like I was that person at some point or another where I was trying to be a mom and, you know, trying to be a daughter, trying to be a friend, and then neglecting myself in the process. And so a lot of my clients are in that space where, you know, they have a lot going on. They show up for everybody else, and now they just kind of want to show up for themselves.
I know that's right. I definitely think that, as you mentioned, millennials, like that is something that we prioritize.
For sure.
Is ourselves, and it's not to say like, oh, we don't care about no one or being selfish. It's just, I think that we're becoming more aware of like being real with ourselves or what our capacity actually is, and then talking about it,
Right.
and trying to do something about
Facts.
it, which I think that's the most challenging part. I think we can recognize and we can talk about it all day, but the most challenging part is showing up, doing the work, and challenging ourselves.
Yeah, because it's not easy.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely
it's not easy. And because we live in a space now where we have social media, everything is based off like instant gratification that it's gonna happen like today and immediately. Right. And it's not. It's a process, and sometimes it could be a very slow process. It takes its time, and so I think that for millennials, I think what you said was great, is recognizing that there's a problem, but we're still in that kind of space where it's just like, okay, how do I do something? What do I do in order to create that change?
Agreed. So what is your favorite part about what you do?
It's definitely seeing people transform. Yeah. Like being a therapist and watching somebody come in, usually at some of the lowest points in their lives, and then watch them grow and watch them transform and get to start living versus surviving, because people don't understand how conditioned they are to survive.
Let's dive into that, because I know exactly what you mean by surviving.
Yeah.
And some people don't realize that they are surviving.
Oh, for sure.
I would say at a recent workplace that I was in survivor mode. Like, I was in the position where I was a contract worker, but then if I didn't work, I didn't get paid.
Facts, yeah.
So that for me was, well, I can't afford to get sick.
Yep.
So therefore, I got to figure it out and make it work. Right. I also didn't have healthcare insurance.
Right.
So I was like, let me eat these fruits and veggies to keep my health going. Right. And I got to make it to work. Like, if it's anybody that was at work all the time, it was me. Yeah. The most. Right. Even during the pandemic. The pandemic, I will never forget. I showed up one morning. I was like, did I miss something? Like, what's going on today? I went up in there and it was like, yeah, they're letting everybody work from home, but they're going to allow you to work because they understood, like, if I don't work, I don't get paid. Right. And I couldn't work from home. But it was like, I was literally like at the forefront of the pandemic where people were not wearing their mask yet. Like, it was still freshly like new, and people didn't understand like what all it actually entailed of having COVID and stuff like that. So it was just like I was up there like, man, survivor mode. And on top of that, all the like injustice of like killing of our black people, like George Floyd and so many other people were being killed at the time. Like, I specifically remember going into the bathroom and like crying. Right. And I had to come back, and here's my manager. You doing okay, Jasmine? And I'm just like, yeah. You know, like,
and that's the thing. Like, we get so used to showing up and putting on that mask, walking out the door, and just acting like everything okay, but it's really not. And you know, I think that being in a space where you can be vulnerable with yourself, to be like, you know what, I'm not good. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm not okay to show up and put on and be this person that somebody else needs when I can't even be that person for myself. Yeah. it's just a really tough space to be in. And when you talk about the pandemic, you got to think about how many people were navigating, okay, if my kids aren't out of school, how am I going to go to work? If I don't go to work, I can't pay my bills. If I can't pay my bills, what are we going to do? So then you're down this rabbit hole of things trying to control what you really can't control, because we're in the middle of a pandemic and the government says, cut that shit out.
Right. Exactly. Like,
yeah.
What are we doing here,
Right.
people? You know what I mean? So, and I'm sure that speaks to a lot of people.
Yeah. And we're still recovering, okay?
Still.
We not over that. Like,
right.
The crazy thing is that the fact that there's not any kind of programming or no bounce backs or no strategic plan on how do we reacclimate ourselves into society post-COVID, it was just like, okay, we flip on a switch and we flip off the switch. But no, like, people, especially kids, man,
oh yeah,
they are really struggling to bounce back in school, like from an educational standpoint. But do you know how many kids was in social isolation? I have college students who are like, I spent half of my high school experience at home. Now I got to go to college.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, that's crazy, because you can't get back that time, and it's like trying to reintroduce them into society. And so it's a lot for kids, but as adults, I don't think we fully process what we went through during COVID. It's just like, oh, well, we got to get back to it. We got to survive.
Yeah. But I will even say this, like, as a millennial, one thing about millennials these days, we're like, first of all, you're not about to make me another number in your company. You need to value me, for one. If you don't, I'm going to get the stuff in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of us like that out there.
Yeah.
I can definitely say, like, in my last place of job, like, I remember seeing people that had been in there for 20 plus years. And I was like, how are y'all in here this long? Because I know I'm not gonna be that. Like, this is not the place for me.
Right.
And I think adults that have been working, like your baby boomers and people that are older, I don't know what that generation is. I can't remember what that is. Gen Z, Y, I don't know, honey.
The whole alphabet at this
the whole alphabet, X, Y, Z. But it's just a different work ethic.
Yes, for sure.
And there's also it was just different back then of getting to certain places where you have to be in certain environments and you have to work with people just to be that one person that starts it all.
Right.
And I think after the pandemic that there has been, for some people, a realization of, like, I was doing a lot.
Right. Or just understanding that, how the normal work schedule. Who came up with our work schedule need to be Monday through Friday from 8 to 5?
I read that it was Ford himself that started that whole schedule of stuff, which is not healthy.
No,
like, at all. Like,
because you don't have time. Like, if you're a parent, you ain't got. If you're not a parent, when you gonna go to the doctor?
Exactly.
How you gonna go to the post office?
Exactly.
What are you gonna do because if everybody's operating on these same business schedules, you really just gonna do your work? No. So I think that opened, for a lot of people who are doing their work remotely and looking at scheduling and things. I think that a lot of businesses, it did open their eyes, as well as employees, to be like, you know what, we be doing too much.
Yeah,
we be doing too much.
Yeah. I would say, and so with the kids that you brought up, I think about that, and it's just like, I think about being a kid growing up, and this is in the age of, like, when AOL was out here, like, with dial-up. I'm telling my age, but like AIM.
Yeah,
that was like the beginning of, like, interacting with people in other places outside of where you live.
Right.
But we also had, like, being able to be outside and like run around and stuff like that. And so I think that kind of helped with, like, social skills.
Yeah.
But with the pandemic, it completely took away social skills for some kids that were born during the pandemic, that had never been to a playground before and interacted with kids.
Right.
And now you got to go into this setting where you're there for hours on end. You have to sit still versus when you're at home, you can run around, do what you
Right.
want to do, rumble, tumble,
Mm-hmm.
jump, everything. And I mean, also with parents, like
Yeah.
you're constantly around your kids when you
Man,
don't have a break. Like you didn't have a break at work,
listen, it wasn't for me.
right?
It wasn't for me. I was stressed. I was stressed, and I was like, I don't know how we're gonna make it. Not only just from the being around them all day and not having that escape, but again, those stresses of I gotta work, I gotta pay bills, I gotta do this, but also trying to teach them. Man, listen, I'm not a
Yes,
teacher,
right.
and I understand what my skill set is, and I was honest. And listen, that was just not, it wasn't for me, and I think that was also a moment of reflection as a parent for me to understand that the value of the education system, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying, and the work that teachers do, because sometimes you can't see it for its true value until you're forced to do it.
yeah,
And I think that was like a overall picture because baby, I was stressed. I was like, do I
yeah.
need to smoke me a pack of Newports? And I don't even smoke cigarettes. You know, it
Yeah.
was stressful. And so I think that was, like you said, just not getting that time to send your kids to school, let the teachers do what the teachers do, you
Mm-hmm.
prepare in other ways, was again had a very negative effect on a lot of people. And how do you handle that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? How are you being able to prioritize what you probably don't even know is your mental health
Right.
against surviving this whole
Right.
pandemic?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think now though is a time after the pandemic, post pandemic is where people started prioritizing their health a little bit
Yeah.
more. It's kind of like whatever that you had on the surface, it brought it all up for you to realize
It wasn't
certain
even on the
things.
surface. It was definitely buried, but
Yeah.
the pandemic brought it to the surface for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Because there were so many people walking around acting like they was okay, like we said, surviving.
Correct. Yes.
The pandemic put you in isolation. You had
Yes.
to deal with your kids every day, all day. You had to learn how to budget your money. All of these things that people really not doing on a regular day basis.
Right.
And now you realizing, dang, I don't get along with my partner. Dang, my kid, I don't know how to effectively discipline my kids. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
maybe I be spending too much money on this and this. Now it's like, it was like being able to hold the mirror. Like there was no way you can avoid it at no cost.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so, but now too, it's like you're back into reality.
Mm-hmm.
You have to adjust your schedule, however it's been changed now. But then you also now you still have the seasons
Yeah.
that you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, what is going on? Like all of a
Right.
sudden, like I'm sadder. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
good. Like I've adjusted. I've readjusted this.
Mm-hmm.
I've developed a new routine.
Right.
But then they're like, something has changed.
Yeah.
And that is a thing. If you don't realize it, it definitely is a thing that people experience where there's in some locations the sun is not around as much, and that plays a big difference. Like that's why people get excited about like spring and summer.
Yeah.
Is because the sun is like it's out a little bit more. It's closer to the sun where it's obviously warmer. And sometimes in the fall and the winter, we have a little more overcast sometimes, or it's just plain out cold.
Right. And with the sun, time changing since who made that up, to where time falls back and it's getting darker earlier and all of that. So I think that people tend to think they don't tend to connect their emotional shifts to seasons
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
And you have to be able to recognize that seasonal depression, seasonal anxiety, these seasonal changes are very much real. And if you don't believe it, go look it up in the DSM-5 because it's a real diagnosis. Like this ain't nothing that's just like, oh, we're just saying this,
Yeah.
because when we talk about like something like winter blues or December blues, sometimes people like to package stuff up to sound nice.
Yeah.
Versus call a thing a thing. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. And understanding that it's possible for it to happen to you and being mindful of what that looks like, I think is very important.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. What are the traits of winter blues.
Yeah. So if you notice that you experience like sadness, or you start isolating, or just feeling like a sense of weight, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That could be related to anything. When you
Yeah.
think about, the seasonal changes, you got to think about, we got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas, we got New Year's, and a lot of people are stuck in grief.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you think about holidays, you have to then be reminded of family that's not going to be there. You have to be reminded of, memories that you're not going to be able to create. Or even when you talk about parents, or you being stressed about, am I going to be able to afford gifts, and the stress that brings, being mindful of so much pressure. The end of the year coming, and people are like, oh, you need to be prepared for the new year, and you need to be doing this and setting goals for the new year, and you're not even finished with this year. So it's a lot of pressure in so many different ways that people just start to feel that. And it shows up by you starting your mood shift, and you could be real good, and then all of a sudden it's just like you start to notice, like, dang, what's wrong? I can't shake this. I can't. I'm crying, and I don't know why. I don't want to be around nobody. I don't know why. I'm worried, anticipate all of these things. And you get to a space where you just like, I'm just going to be in this funk.
Yeah. And that's real. Like, that's me. That has been me. First of all, I'm a Pisces. Let me put that out there. Okay. First of all, I'm a Pisces, but I do really well, in my opinion, with managing my emotions. Right. Ever since I've gone to therapy. Okay. For one, I highly encourage that you try therapy. At least give it about 3 sessions at least. Like, get through the consultation. Mm-hmm. That don't count as one. And then do 3 sessions to see how you like it. Right. Or see if you like it, if you don't like it. But I think you'll like it. But anyway, like a few days ago, I got overwhelmed. Yeah. And it was one of those moments where it was like, there's so much stuff for me to do. Like, I'm excited to do it. I'm grateful to have the opportunities to be in the position that I'm in. Right. But also, it's like, I'm one person. Yeah. And, there are people that's just like always on the go, or this hustle culture is what we call it, grind culture. Toxic. That's not me. Toxic. that is not me. I like my rest. I like to get my sleep if I can. But yeah, I had a moment, and for once, like, I am also somebody that it's tough to ask for help sometimes, because I've been in situations where it's like, dang, I need the help. I asked for the help and they didn't want to help me. Right. So it's like, I got to figure out by myself. Or it's also like, you don't want to put the emotional like burden on somebody. Right. Of like telling them your woes, what's going on with you. Right. And stuff like that. But for this time, I was like, I have a friend who asked me or told me that they were there for me and to reach out to them when I'm having my moment. Right. And I did. I was like, guess who's overwhelmed?
Yeah. But it takes a lot for a person to get to that point. You know what I'm saying? To be in a space where it's just like, okay, because that puts you in a place of vulnerability. If you already overwhelmed, the last thing you want to do is feel like somebody is neglecting or abandoning you when you need them the most. You know? And so I think what happens a lot is we lie to other people, but we lie to ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So
say it again.
When you lie to other people, but you also lie to yourself. Yep. On a day-to-day basis, I guarantee you that somebody asks you, how you doing? And what you say?
I'm good.
Knowing good and well that you're not okay. Right. And it's not even about, because I think a lot of times it be people saying, I don't want people in my business. And it's just like, it's not about that.
It's not.
You have space to be authentic and transparent with your emotions without over explaining. Right. So if somebody says, how you doing today? You can say, you know what, I'm not okay, but I'm choosing to keep going. Yes. That's honest, right? Without Because then what happens if that person says, you know, well, how can I support you? Because that's my thing. I'm going to ask, how can I support you?
Yeah.
I might not have the answers. You might not even know what you need, but that's going to at least kind of trigger that, okay, you know what? Wait, let me think about, what do I need? How can somebody else support me? Right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're a person who doesn't know how to delegate or ask for help, that is going to prompt you to be like, you know what, just like you do with your friend. Well, they said, you know, if I...
Right. They say.
So let me utilize this as an option.
Exactly. And I think too, what's important is to reflect on the people that are in your circle.
Facts.
Of like who's actually offered to help you, or their actions have actually shown that they're willing to help you.
Yeah.
I will also, in two part of saying that as well, is being aware of your expectations, because if you have certain expectations of people to respond to you in a certain way or to do certain things for you and then they don't do it,
Right.
it's kind of like you've already set them up before they even had a chance to even help you.
Facts.
And so I think like one of the good ways or starters, which is this kind of is a segue of going into that, is if there's someone one where you want to talk to about something, I think it's sometimes good to let them know like, hey, I just need somebody to hear me talk.
Yeah.
Like I just need to get it out.
Right.
Or to be like, do you mind giving me your advice on this?
Right.
Because it prepares the person to be like, to know if they have the capacity or not to give you the help or give you some advice in some way, shape, or form. Or they just might just be a really good listener, and like it's a win-win for both people where there's not a pressure there of an expectation to get a response out of somebody that's just not built like that.
Yeah, but most people expect them from somebody else.
Yes.
So when you expect you from other people, it's just like everybody's experiences have not shaped them like you.
Yeah.
Everybody's experience has not, you know, built them for whatever you're built for. And so one of the things that I do with my friends is I say, do you have space? Right? It's just as simple as that, because it gives me one, if they have space, now I know I'm safe to move forward with whatever I need. And if they don't even put yourself in a position to where you're like about to pour your heart out to somebody who don't have the space for you.
Yes.
You know, and it also sometimes, especially during these winter months, you know, people can dump. You know, you be ready to just like vent and just like dump on somebody else.
Yep.
What if that person is going through something similar and they're like at their breaking point and you just pretty much tip them over the scale? You just don't, you never know.
You never know.
And so just simply saying, you know, do you have space, invites a person to be honest and to decide, let them choose whether or not they're willing to be whatever you need in that moment or not. And then if they're not, don't take that personal, because it ain't got nothing to do with you.
Right. And that's the thing too that I think is a very common thing. People assume and they take it personal.
Y'all need to go read the 4 Agreements.
Oh, I love that book.
Because it's good.
I got one more chapter I gotta read. And I have been applying it. Like I created a screensaver actually where it says don't take everything personal.
Yeah, because that's a game changer.
It really is.
It is a game changer, because a lot of times people make the assumption that if somebody doesn't want to do anything, oh, you're doing this to me, or you doing this against me, you have something against me. And it's just like, listen, you cool and all, but everything is not about you. You know what I'm saying? Everything is, it's not your world. And sometimes that's just who a person is. That's just what they have capacity for.
Right.
And it's not about you. It's more so about them. And that was definitely a game changer for me in all aspects of life, realizing that I can't be responsible for other people's emotions and feelings and how they respond, or what if they don't like something that I do. I can't be responsible for that.
Yeah.
And understanding that if they do something or say something to me, whether it was intentional or not, it's not a reflection of what I feel about myself. So I ain't gonna take it personal.
And that's the thing too of like taking something personal is being aware, like during this season,
Mm-hmm.
kind of what you talked about earlier, but it's like you're in control of your emotions.
Facts.
You're in control of how you respond to people, how you interact with people. So just as like the isolation portion, like I think there's a balance. I think sometimes you need to get
For
away
sure.
to not have all the voices
Yeah.
from other people of telling what you should be, what you could be,
Mm-hmm.
and just to be like, just be,
Yeah.
just to just sit there and
Yeah.
just be quiet to yourself and reflect on all that you've accomplished so far,
Right.
right? And giving yourself grace in times of where you are feeling low, and you know, really like nourishing yourself then.
Right. But so many people are afraid to sit alone
Oh
and be
yeah.
by themselves
Oh yeah.
because when you are by yourself, you have to figure out how to quiet the noise on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that can be scary because for a lot of people with anxiety, it's like trying to control the outcome. And so a lot of times people are so afraid that if I sit by myself and I'm not able to control the outcome, what happens? Am I
Yeah.
going to be in this like deep dark place? Am I going to be in this like, am I going to
Mm-hmm.
want to spaz out or whatever? So it's just like, so I'm just not going to do that. And I'm going to
Right.
go over here and just whatever. But at some point, just like you said, sometimes when you sit down with yourself, you have to be willing to balance and consider both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
You might have negative stuff going on, but don't erase the positive.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like your focus can't just be on one thing and not on the other. And I often tell my clients and people who come to talk to me in general, whether you work with me in a therapy space or not, is two things can always be true at once.
Yeah.
You can be happy and you can still be sad.
Correct.
You can be struggling and still choose to live. You can all of these things can find a balance, but if you're choosing to focus only on the negative things, that's where, especially during these holiday months, is when things start to drain because you're only focused on, you know, I got to figure out how I'm gonna make this money for these gifts. I got to figure out if I'm gonna celebrate with this side of the family because they be having drama, or oh, I don't have my mom this year, and so I gotta, what am I gonna do without her? You know, you're only focusing on that, but not even appreciative of the fact that you even get a chance to see it.
Right.
That in itself is like so much value.
Yeah. I mean, I would even say the fact that you wake up.
Yeah.
The fact that you can wake up and have an opportunity to do something different.
Yeah.
I think that in itself, there's a gift in that a lot of people take for granted just because of all the just the stuff around you that takes you away from those simple things.
Right.
So I will say, so going into a little bit more is, what would you encourage for somebody that are experiencing these things? Like, what's the beginning point that you would suggest for them to start at?
Being honest with yourself is the number one thing, because if you don't identify and recognize that something is wrong, you can't do nothing about it. There's no, you can't take no direction. You can't figure out where you need to go next. So one, you have to be honest with yourself. And once you're honest with yourself, then it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Yeah. What am I going to do? Now, when you talk about like who's in your circle, like your circle, your village, your community, however you decide to label it, right? Make sure that's solid. You know, a lot of times we are in spaces with people who are only in transactional relationships. To where it's, I only receive if I give you something, that's or right, if I show up in a capacity that's, you know, of your standard, versus having people who just solid, you know what I'm saying, who just solid and who are going to be there for you when you need them, but it's also reciprocated. You can show up for them when they need you as well. And it doesn't have to be, oh, you got to give me something so that I can give you something. It's more so I'm here. Yes. I'm here. So making sure your circle is solid and having at least one person, I don't care if that's your friend, your mom, your therapist, whoever, that you can be completely like transparent with. Because sometimes that those emotions become so much because you hold them in and you suppress. Yeah. Right? Most people who are dealing with like, you know, seasonal depression, winter blues, December blues, whatever you want to call it, it's because all of those emotions come at one time, and then this is what you just took them away. And try to push through and fight through and get through, and it's just like, no, you got to let it out.
Right.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way. Now, don't be out here drinking and smoking and all of that. You know what I'm saying? None of that. You know what I'm saying? But even just, you know, if you're grieving a loved one, write them a letter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, figure out a way to honor them and how you can create their presence. If you're spiritual people, like, spirits don't die.
Right.
And so how are you incorporating them in this transition of what you're in, the season that you're in? I'm real big on journaling and writing letters and being able to process, because even if you don't verbally say it to somebody else, writing it down is allowing yourself to exhale those emotions that you kind of keeping tucked away too.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. I personally, like, for me, working out,
yeah,
calms my thoughts.
For sure.
Like, my mind is constantly going, and I often get overwhelmed. But when I work out, it's like I am forced to concentrate on what I'm doing. Yeah. And while I'm doing that, I am also encouraging myself, like, let's go. You got one more. One more. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
And so that kind of is like an award system for me, if you will. If there's something like that as well for somebody, I think it's like getting yourself to a place where you do something that you enjoy.
Right.
Healthy.
Something
that you enjoy, but it brings out those good feelings for you.
Right.
To face your truth as you're talking about.
Sure.
Like, yeah, you might get a little sad, but it's like, it's about embracing who you are as a person, like, in the moment. Like, if you don't like who you are right then and there, there's certain things that it's like, man, that's ugly about me. Like, and I'm not talking about like your looks.
Right.
I'm talking about what's inside of here that you've been suppressing. If that's not expressing yourself, not crying.
Yeah.
That's a real big thing.
Right.
That people are like, oh, I don't cry. And it's just like,
wow.
What's the point? They'll be like, what's the point of me crying? Like, what's that gonna fix? It releases.
It's a release, yeah.
It legit is a release.
Yeah, it's similar to like working out. When you talk about working out, now I don't know the stuff that releases, but naturally you release certain kind of chemicals and hormones and stuff into your body when you work out, similar to when you go outside or you breathe in fresh air or putting your feet on grass, like literally like walking outside bare feet. There are natural things that you can do to release some of those same things inside of you that you would get if you was having sex or if you were drinking some water, or you know what I'm saying? There's ways to do that without doing that. There's other ways to do it, which is why when you talk about creating healthy habits and when you talk about building healthy coping skills, the list is not a limited list. It's not this just like, all right, well, look, we checked off this box. No, it's not that. There's so many different things that you can do, but you have to personally go on your own journey and figure out what works for you. I know for me, sitting in silence is everything. Everything is so loud all the time for me. I got kids, I got clients. You be outside and you just hear, but like when I can just be able to sit in my office and I can hear a pin drop, like that is the most therapeutic thing to me. Or even I've enjoyed what it's like to take a shower, but not just take a shower, but feeling like, what does it feel like when the water hits your body? Being so present in that moment that you realize like, when I hit the water on my back, it's hotter than when it's on my chest because it's been conditioned right here to know what that feels like versus, that's like it's a shock to your body. Or taking a cold shower versus a hot one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like those types of moments creates you to be present when you able to identify like the smallest details that people be like, I never thought about that.
Yeah. Going to a spa and getting a massage is great.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, like, that's temporary.
How often you gonna be able to do that? Because you're gonna be worried about stressing about, well, I just spent $100 and I got my light bill due next week.
Right, exactly. Like, just like talking about, you said this earlier, but like this stuff is like a journey.
Yeah.
It's truly a lifestyle.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
seasons are always going to come.
Always.
And the thing about it is, how are you going to deal with you in every seasonal change?
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's important to like have those go-tos for yourself when you know, like, all right, now I remember last year this happened, and there's a chance that it may happen again. So what do you have in your toolkit to help with that? You know what I mean? Like,
and building that and making that always accessible for you, especially in a moment where you start to feel those emotions. Start literally, like, if you have it in your notes in your phone, if you have a notepad that you keep in, that you take with you all the time, like literally having a space where you like start making, okay, here are my emotional, like if I'm emotional, this is my go-to list, or this is what I need to do. Because I think sometimes when you are in a space of emotion, you ain't gonna think clearly.
Yeah.
And you're going to automatically go to whatever you think feels good. And 9 times out of 10, it's not.
Yep.
Or it will be temporary. And then it's not a sustainable thing. You can only go get your nails done so often. You can only go get your hair done so often. But when you talk about learning how to meditate, or if you going outside for a walk, or yoga, or it's so many different things, you know, you have to build and consistently build healthy habits that are not just going to give you a temporary fix.
Right. I would say for me, I'm going to put myself out there. When I have my moments where I feel like my little time bomb about to go tick, 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 I'm always like, it's probably best that I step away.
For sure. Yeah.
Because the way that I respond is going to be reactive and impulsive.
Yeah.
So
that's awareness.
Right. It's like, I need to process this. I'm going to step away. And when I'm ready, I'm going to come back.
But in our culture, Black people are so conditioned to think that if you walk away, you weak, or you this, every negative thing. And it's just like, baby, I'm exhibiting control.
Exactly.
That's top tier behavior, okay?
Yes.
That's top tier. So one of the things that I've realized is that we don't know how to communicate. Right? Healthy communication is not something that's often taught in the Black community. And so when you have moments where you do need a timeout, you sometimes have to verbally say, hey, I just need a minute. I'm stepping away. I'm not walking away. I'm not leaving. Because then you have to think about people who are triggered, neglect, abandonment, all of those things. And so it's not your responsibility to think about all of those things, because you're regulating yourself. However, it creates a more healthy state for you and the person, or whatever situation that you're in, to be able to say, hey, I need a minute to breathe, to process. And then you can come back. And then, you know, once you have a moment to process, you realize that now I'm logically responding versus emotionally responding.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you said that too, about considering the other person. Which is attachment styles.
It is.
If you haven't heard of it before, make sure you look that up. Do your research.
Go take it's a free assessment.
Where do they find this?
Just Google attachment style quiz, and I can't think of the name, but it's the first thing to come up. The assessment is not long at all, but yes, you need to know your attachment style. Your attachment style and love language, like that's the top 2 first things that I make all my clients do.
Yeah, and I think that's good, because that's also like, if you're somebody that doesn't like to have conversations, or you don't know how to start a conversation when like getting to know anybody that you are developing a relationship with, it doesn't have to be romantic, is you understand that person. It's not going to be perfect, of course, and the biggest teacher is by experience, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I also think that when you're able to be like, so what's your attachment style? Or what's your love language? It starts that conversation of trying to understand somebody, like genuinely understand them.
Right.
And I think when somebody recognizes that it creates a healthier start
Yeah.
to a relationship of like communication, being genuine, not being transactional,
Right.
and being mindful of that, like in the future of these are certain things that I need to consider or work on
Right.
when I'm interacting with people.
Right. But when you talk about people cultivating relationships, the biggest mistake I think that we've made is that it's about putting your best foot forward.
Oh yeah,
and not your most authentic self forward.
that's good.
Right. And so you come and you like, oh, I'm this and I'm that. And you showing all the best parts of you.
Yeah.
Then you start to get in and now you like, well, let me show you who I really am. And the person like, wait a minute, what's happening here?
Right.
Versus presenting that from the jump, because building a relationship of any kind, whether it's a family relationship, a friendship, an intimate relationship, whatever, it's going to require you to get vulnerable.
Oh yeah.
Vulnerability is scary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so you can't be vulnerable if you trying to fake the funk.
Correct, because you can only act for so long.
For so long, because when the mask comes off, you know, who is that? Who are you?
Right.
But a lot of people don't know who they are behind the mask anyway.
Right.
So
I encourage everyone to take this information in that we've talked about today. Yeah. I'm sure there was something in here that I hope could help somebody out there. Make sure that like you take the time. If you need to take a break because like you're getting overwhelmed, that's okay.
Right.
Pause us. Come back.
Yeah.
To where you're in a place that where you can receive what we're saying. Because at the end of the day, this is only meant to help.
Right.
And hopefully it is helping. Yeah. And with good intent as well. And so thank you for being here. If you will, share with the people where they can find you to connect with you more. Yeah.
You can follow me on social media, Beyond the White Couch, on Instagram and Facebook. My website is recycleenergy.co, C-O, or beyondthewhitecouch.us. Either way, you can contact me. If you feel like something resonated with you, you know what I'm saying? My inbox is always open. It ain't even got to be on no, I'm trying to be a therapist type stuff. Like sometimes you just need a safe space. So you can do that. If you're looking for a therapist, you can hit me up, but I can also help point you in the direction of a therapist as well that's local here too. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. So yeah, thank you again to our special guest, Ciera Young. Make sure that you support her in everything that she's doing, her platforms. Email her if you would like to connect with her, of course. And again, make sure that you subscribe to Black and Healthy, the podcast, our YouTube channel, as well as, connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. And if you would like to sponsor the Black and Healthy podcast, just make sure that you email me at blackandhealthy@gmail.com. But thank you again for being here. Hope this was helpful for you all. Wishing you the absolute best and really pray that you get some sort of healing. Just take one step at a time, one day at a time, and you will continue to grow as a person. So thanks again and see you later. Bye. Bye.